Today on Technado, we're talking with Tom Lawrence of Lawrence Systems about his MSP and also his YouTube channel. We're also going to look at all the announcements out of the Microsoft event last week and talk about a bunker full of hackers in Germany. That's all coming up on Technado, starting right now. Hello and welcome to Technado. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, joined as always by the one and only Don Bazette. Don, how you doing?
I am doing great, ready to focus and communicate technological concepts to the masses.
It's going to be an interesting show.
This is Justin Dennison over here, but I do want to bring up the reason that Don is acting so strange. I think we have to talk about
the amount of pain that I'm in.
Yeah. So just to reenact here, Don picked up his pen and went to press to open it on the side that's pointy, because not only was it already opened, but now was it orange ink? Do you have something
it is
orange circle?
Orange ink, although it
mixing
looks
with the
red
blood.
Yeah.
So that's
he tattooed himself.
So consummate professional, trying to keep my eye on the camera and stuff, not looking at the pen.
We weren't filming yet.
I know.
It was like a news segment where he was like,
The takeaway is we are off to a bad start.
Yes. Or a great
start.
start. I think that's a matter of perspective.
We do have a great show, though, that's going to be coming up here for you. Not only do we have a lot of news, a lot of Microsoft stuff going on from their exciting announcements that we'll break down, but we also have Tom Lawrence joining us. He's the owner of Lawrence Technical Services, but you might actually know him from his YouTube channel, The Tech Knowledge. So we'll be talking with Tom in just a little bit. But first, we're going to get to some stories. But if you're listening, well, you are listening because you just heard me say that. If you want to play along with us on Buzzword Bingo, you can head over to go.itpro.tv/buzzword-bingo. We added some new words and took out some words that we weren't saying anymore.
Yeah, I was getting ready to ask, if you've been keeping your bingo card, you should probably go get a new bingo card because we've updated them, right?
Yeah, we took out the words like IPO that we're not really saying.
Man, that could have been
Nope,
on there.
see, nothing. You get nothing for that. But the people at home that have their old card,
yeah.
Congratulations, actionable IPOs.
Yeah, with
whatnot.
The stuff.
Great. So our first article, we're starting off with the Microsoft announcements over on TechCrunch. Microsoft's Windows Virtual Desktop service is now generally available. And so we're not going with the hardware stuff first. We're going with the software. So Virtual Desktop now generally available. Is this actually now? Like now I can go and
before it was only available to like captains and sergeants, but now it's available to generals as well.
Yeah,
so that's
brigadier.
Man, Don is in an interesting mood today, isn't he?
Don did not take his medication as he usually does right before.
So tons and tons of announcements coming out of Microsoft. This one's a bit of a follow-up, and it's important because Microsoft is putting so much weight behind it, but they've been rolling out the Windows Virtual Desktop inside of Azure in a beta-like preview. So if you're in the United States, you've actually had access to it for a little while now, but it is in general availability. So all across the world, you can now spin up virtual desktops. Now, most of you are probably not doing that today. The reason I wanted to highlight it, though, is Microsoft is increasingly dropping hints that this is the future of the Windows desktop, that one day your desktop OS will amount to basically a thin client that is just connecting to a desktop that is completely managed by Microsoft, alleviating all of the upgrade bugs and quirks and things that happen with Windows rollouts, and allowing them to centrally manage antivirus and all the other various things that they need to do. So that's like their future and their vision. If you are an IT worker or somebody involved in tech, this is something you need to pay attention to because it's going to be impacting us over the next couple of years.
I like, too, that gives the focus for the hackers to just one system they have to attack then, and then they can basically
modern efficiencies.
All of Microsoft's.
Anytime I hear about this, I always go, well, when didn't we have thin clients originally, and then we moved to not thin clients, and now we're moving back to thin clients?
Like a thicker client.
Yeah, it was thin, then thick, and then thick with two C's, right? That was that client.
Ooh, that client thick.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Is that a buzzword?
Does this typify as desktop as a service?
It does. Yeah. This would fall into that. And, the big thing holding us back from this, in the 1970s and 80s, mainframes, green screens, dummy terminals, that was all really, really common stuff. And it required physical proximity. You had to be near the mainframe for it to work, right? Well, as systems became more and more complex, distributed systems became more popular, and we broke away from that. So everybody had their own standalone system. But now internet access is kind of becoming ubiquitous, that you can get internet access pretty much everywhere. Cellular networks are way faster and more reliable than they used to be. And so the idea of buying a laptop that was completely non-functional unless it had internet access is actually something achievable for a lot of people these days.
So, at our office, let's say the internet goes down. Everyone goes, oh, man, that's tough. I can't work on the thing I was working on, but, I can go edit that document, or I can, catch up on this or that's in a spreadsheet or something like that. If that were to happen in this kind of case, I mean, you just have nothing anymore?
Well, it depends. So, like the way VMware did it, they actually had where you could cache your virtual machine to run offline. But then you've got to have the hardware to power that. And the big glory of all this stuff is that you could have like ultra thin laptops and tablets and stuff that run a full desktop because they don't need the hardware. It's all being run remote. It's all being run and powered by cloud systems. So the more ideal situation would be when you're in your office, you've got a fiber optic line with high-speed internet. And then if your internet connection goes down, you jump on the municipal Wi-Fi that covers your entire city in a giant warm fuzzy blanket of internet goodness that cities like Gainesville do not have, mostly, and this is your people's fault, Peter, because of the liberals and their desire to have trees everywhere.
Oh, I thought you meant gingers.
Well, I was like, wait a minute, does that include me?
Yeah, then I would have roped you
like
into
the Dutch, or what are we?
Actually,
Northern Europeans?
Yeah. So, the trees, which are pretty and do allow us to breathe, right? I mean, if we can get over that, trees contain a lot of water, which destroys wireless signals. And so having Wi-Fi internet here is going to be tough, but having it in cities like New York and other places is really easy. So then you...
Does this possibly combine with like some of those low satellite orbiting systems?
Yeah, I was going to say they're good.
Would that now
wires.
provide maybe more impoverished areas with like up-to-date things? Would this be a viable option for...
What Justin wants to know is, can he get cable now at his house in the middle of the
back
woods?
in Virginia?
Yeah.
So cable, yes. As far as your virtual desktop, though, I'm not sure because of the latency, right? Anytime you do satellite, it's like a millisecond up, a millisecond down. No, sorry, not a millisecond. It's a second up, a second down. So you're talking about 2 to 4 seconds of latency. So when you click a mouse button, imagine clicking and it's 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, and then there you go.
My childhood.
Yeah. That would not be good. And it wouldn't matter if you had a gigabit of bandwidth if it's all 4 seconds delayed. If you're watching a movie, you would know you were 4 seconds delayed, and everything would be great. It would be in 4K, whatever. But
If you're playing a video game online, you will not be doing well.
But they've been working on that stuff. Google has what's their Strata, Erica Strata, whatever their gaming platform is called.
It's just a bunch of chips, guys. Motorcycles up in They're like, what is that Kawasaki doing up there?
What's the internet? That's the internet up there.
What's the pricing model for this? Is this fairly reasonably priced? I haven't looked into it.
So oddly enough, there isn't much of a pricing model right now. So you do have a virtual machine that you're powering up, an Azure VM that's powering up. But the idea in the future is going to be that instead of going and buying a Windows license, you're buying a virtual desktop license. And it includes the price of running that desktop over the course of a year. It becomes a subscription service.
All right. Well, as Don said, there were a lot of announcements that came out of this event. So let's get to the next one over at howtogeek.com. Windows 10's Bitlocker encryption no longer trusts your SSD. This doesn't sound like the kind of thing they would announce, but is this kind of a residual that came out of some of the stuff that they talked about?
This is actually a good thing.
Okay.
So Bitlocker, I think everybody knows now that if you have a laptop or mobile device, it's super important that you encrypt your hard drive. Even if you have a desktop, because somebody could break in and steal your desktop. If you have any customer data or whatever, the theft of a piece of equipment in your environment all of a sudden becomes a data breach. And so that's bad. So we need to encrypt it. On Mac OS, you have File Vault. On Linux, you have Lux encryption. On Windows, you have Bitlocker. Well, there are some vendors out there that sell SSDs that have hardware encryption built into them, where they say, look, when you power on our SSD, it recognizes your TPM and it will only unlock the drive if that TPM is present, and the drive is encrypted. The operating system doesn't have to do anything. And in those scenarios, in the past, Windows 10 would look and it would say, oh, your SSD supports native hardware encryption. We'll let it handle it. And Bitlocker would show a status of being on, even though it wasn't doing the encryption because it was the underlying hardware that was doing it. Well, what Microsoft researchers found was that several of the vendors that were out there saying that they supported that encryption actually weren't. Or they said they were supporting it at a level of difficulty or complexity that they weren't actually maintaining, and the security was not up to the standards of what Bitlocker offers. So now they've changed that system where Bitlocker does not trust any hardware encryption. So if you have Bitlocker and it says it's on in software mode, and it's using your CPU's AES acceleration to do that encryption, so it's good performance. But there are vendors out there that are still selling hard drives that do encryption, and if that's the case, they can do that, but Bitlocker will show a status of being off. So if your Bitlocker status mysteriously changed to off recently, it may be because your hard drive was reporting that it was doing the encryption, and that's no longer being trusted.
So does that mean, like, if you had one of these devices, you have double encryption right now because it's still encrypting it?
If you were to turn on Bitlocker now, then you would have double encryption.
Okay.
But if Bitlocker said it was on before, now it just says it's off.
Gotcha.
And so you still have your hard drive encryption, but just not Bitlocker on top of it.
What was the goal for saying, yeah, we're doing encryption at the hardware level? Was it just because I can charge a higher price point?
Yes. Yeah, hard drives have become super cheap, right? You can get a 2 terabyte hard drive, even like SSDs. A 1 terabyte SSD is under $100. So storage prices have dropped a lot. And so a lot of manufacturers out there trying to figure out ways to make those drives more valuable. And a lot of times it's promising a longer warranty when it's the exact same hardware and stuff like that. They can generate more revenue. But in this case, security features built into the disk are considered more reliable than software ones bolted on after the fact. And so they do charge more.
So this article just calls out SSDs. This is not something that is on old spinning disks? Is that not something that was really
hardware-wise? It probably wasn't easy to do that in a performant manner, right?
It's possible, but it's not something that happened very often. And performance is a big part of that. When you have a 1 gig file and you make a single byte change to it, if it's an encrypted file, the whole file has to be re-encrypted, right? And so on a spinning disk, that's a slow and tedious process. On an SSD, it's much faster. So performance is a big part of it,
Gotcha.
But also just being able to do the random writes and things to obscure stuff, you don't have a lot of that with a spinning disk.
All right, we got some more Microsoft news over at CNBC.com. We don't normally go there. The guy who sold Wunderlist to Microsoft is now working on a PowerPoint competitor with funding from Instagram's co-founder. So I just love the concept of, hey, I got all this money from you, I got millions of dollars, and I'm going to use that to kind of fund my next project. Well, obviously with help from Instagram's co-founders, but to fund my next project to compete with you. But probably just to have something else to maybe sell back to Microsoft.
Well, I can't remember. Did we talk about this guy last week on the podcast? Because
No.
there were several articles going around about how he sold Wunderlist to Microsoft. He's one of the co-founders. There was a couple of people, and they sold it to Microsoft. And I loved Wunderlist. I used it all the time. Microsoft acquired it and has basically done next to nothing with it. They have only recently started incorporating some of the features into Microsoft To Do, but Microsoft To Do is not as good as Wunderlist was. And so he started saying, hey, I'd like to buy it back. He wanted to buy it back from Microsoft. Microsoft's not going to sell it, but he offered to buy it back. Well, now he's moving on to another project where he's going to be competing against PowerPoint. And if you've worked in PowerPoint, what he's saying is people spend way too much time trying to arrange boxes and get things lined up. They're trying to make it easy. And what it looks like to me in the product demo, it kind of looks like Squarespace. You ever see Squarespace? If I wanted to create a web page, I could learn about how divs and CSS work and all that stuff and create and lay that out. Or I can just go to Squarespace and click on a button.
It's kind of a WYSIWYG PowerPoint.
Yeah, and so that's what he's trying to create. And who knows, that may have some traction right there because, we've all been through boring, lame PowerPoint presentations. Maybe we need some templates.
Wasn't that what Prezi did?
I was going to say, I thought for a time Prezi was going to be that person to kind of
But I think the motion sickness got the better of it.
Yeah.
They went a little too far maybe.
Prezi focused on animation so much, and it was hard. I was never able to do it really well.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, do I zoom in? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I zoomed out. Oops. Whatever. I'm going to PowerPoint.
That next slide is just the dot on the I on that one.
I
had to
saw
zoom
some
all the
crazy
way in.
presentations.
Oh, they could do some amazing stuff.
Yeah. So he made a bunch of money, and now Instagram's co-founders, but they sold to Facebook, right?
Which
and now
is
they're going
partially owned
after
by Microsoft.
Instagram was partially owned by
Facebook.
No.
Microsoft is a big investor in Facebook. They've got.
Are they?
I thought they had like 10%.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, I don't know. Man, I tell you what.
Yeah.
All I know is I don't have any of that money.
Does
That's a good point.
Microsoft?
Yeah.
That's really all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. Who cares about all that? Where's my money?
Okay, I said 10%. Microsoft purchased 1.6% of Facebook for $240 million at the $15 billion valuation. So, not enough.
I'll sell them 1% of my house.
You know, if we want to
$15
own
billion.
something, we got to set some attainable goals. Like we could probably buy 5% of Napster.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Or 105% of Napster. Yeah.
Well, our 5% investment would increase the overall value of the company.
I was going to say, I thought you used to teach math.
I did. That us buying it is
I can imagine the headlines now, like Napster takes in Series Y round of funding.
Yeah, do you go to like AA then? A, B, A, C?
they're still in a legal battle
Yeah.
with Metallica.
I bet, yeah. Lars will not let that go.
He needs that golden bathtub.
All right, over on howtogeek.com, our next article, confirmed. Windows 10 setup now prevents local account creation. I'm glad we finally have this confirmed after just months and months of speculation by the media.
Gnashing of the teeth.
All right. You guys are Mac users. I know this doesn't bother you,
Yeah.
but for Windows users, especially people who support Windows in a like a small business or medium business environment, this is a bit of an annoying feature. So what Microsoft has done is they've changed Windows 10 Home Edition, not Pro or Enterprise. Like those, if you're in an actual enterprise, you have a volume license, you use the Enterprise Edition. But in Windows 10 Home, when you install it, it now requires you to sign in with I want to say a live.com address, but that's not what they're called. What are they called now?
Outlook?
Microsoft Online, right?
Is it just Microsoft
Yeah,
Online?
Microsoft account, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, it was their old Live ID. Now it's whatever. But you have to sign in with the Microsoft account, which means you've got to create a cloud account, which means it's going to connect your OneDrive. It's going to sync your desktop, your files, your folders, and all the other things, which admittedly are good features to have, especially for a home user. Your system's backing itself up. But in this day and age of people trusting companies less and less, it's kind of forcing you to share that information. There is one workaround, and that is to install Windows 10 Home Edition without a network cable attached. If you're not connected to a network, it will let you create a local user account during the install.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're like Justin and you don't have the internet where you
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
Or electricity.
Yeah. They were like, what's this newfangled cable here? Hey, government man
My
coming around
phone,
here.
my phone cable got big.
Yeah, that's crazy. Tastes bad. We're very sorry. I'm from the
So
country.
anyway, you can
I
get
love
around
this.
this
You
by
can
not
get
plugging
around
in the
it.
network cable. Okay.
But Apple has gotten a lot more forward where when you install Mac OS, it wants you to create that iCloud account. In fact, it asks you twice, and if you still say no, it gives you one more, like, are you sure?
Yeah.
And then after the install is done, it even asks you a fourth time. So they're getting pretty forward. And it goes back to that whole virtual desktop. Like at some point, you're not going to be able to avoid having these things connected to the cloud. Having a local-only operating system is becoming less and less a reality unless you move to operating systems like Linux.
Is that one of the, does that bother you? And either of you two, where it's like, do you want to put in your iCloud credentials? No, I'm good. Are you sure? Does that
Bothers
bother
me.
y'all?
Yeah. Mostly because I have work computers and I have personal computers and I have multiple computers, right? And I don't want them to sync.
Yeah.
I need them to be separate.
Yeah, that's the feature. That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is annoying. You're right. All right, let's head over now for the big announcement. What?
That's horrible, Justin. Anyway,
There's not a great segue for everything. Speaking of horrible, let's get to our next article over at The Verge. No, this is not horrible. This is
the
actually
big one.
the
Yeah.
cool thing. Surface Neo first look, Microsoft's dual screen prototype. And this is not the phone, because that got a lot of buzz in the consumer space, but this is essentially a laptop. Essentially,
it's two tablets with a door hinge.
yeah, it's two tablets duct taped together, and it's essentially Don's, fantasy.
But this is new like Web 3.0 duct tape. Look
Oh, it's made out of Gorilla Glass.
It's on the inside.
it's HTML5 duct tape.
Ah.
Oh wait, is that?
Nope.
Nope.
There's duct tape on there.
So Microsoft had a big Surface launch event this week, and I'll admit I've become pretty bored with Microsoft announcements, and a lot of times I don't even tune in. This time I just happened to be in another meeting, which was literally the most boring meeting I've attended all year long. And so,
Hey, didn't we have a meeting the other day?
I haven't been in meetings for
that
weeks.
presentation I did? Was that?
so I actually did watch the event, and it started out super lame, right? So they announced the new Surface 3 and Surface Pro, Surface Book, whatever, the best Surface Book ever, which is just as lame as the old one.
Yep.
So nothing new and exciting there. Then they announced a Surface with an AMD processor, which is a big deal, but most of us don't give two craps about. And then they dropped some bombshells. And the big bombshells were the Surface Neo, which is a lap tablet. I don't know. It's a kind of in between a tablet and a laptop. Has two screens. And the Surface Duo, which is actually a phone with two screens. Microsoft, who has very visibly killed their phone and mobile ambitions, to announce a phone now, my first response was, oh, great, we're going to have another 5-word Windows operating system. It'll be the Windows 11 series, whatever, mobile edition. But it's actually running Android. And yeah, that was a bit of a bombshell.
So they're embracing their competitor and going just into the hardware space for that one, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because for years, I mean, Microsoft was a software shop, and the Surface, all that.
I think the Xbox changed that, right? That's when it started.
Probably.
Is when they released the first
the
Xbox.
Zoom was right around then too.
The first Xbox had ran the Windows 2000 kernel.
Yep, and it was a Celeron processor.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Interesting. So the big question I have on the Neo here is going to be keyboard, because we've talked before about how difficult it is to type.
Touch keyboards suck.
Yeah, to type on a touch keyboard. But it's pretty interesting when I saw with this one. I don't know how well it's going to travel, but if we take a look at your screen here, it's actually got a physical keyboard that I understand is magnetic.
Yeah, when the lady was up giving the presentation, it was stuck on the back of the device.
Okay, so that's how you travel with it.
And she opened it into tablet mode, and she just kind of popped that keyboard around. And when you do that, the keyboard takes up about 2/3 of one of the screens.
And you end up with one of
And
those.
I was going to say, where's your mouse
flipping
then? But I'm sure obviously
toolbars.
And
these are touch screens, so
do you know what it's called?
no.
A Wonder Bar.
Oh,
It's
like with a
a
WU?
Like with the V at the beginning?
I only heard it out loud. I don't know.
But they bought
Wunderbar.
Wunderlist. Am I going to be able to make to-dos there?
Maybe
in my
that's the
Wonder
tie-in.
Bar.
That's why they don't want to sell it. But anyhow, so it adapts. It recognizes the keyboard is there, and then it functions. And the keyboard actually works wirelessly too. So if you fold open the two screens and prop it up somehow, I imagine there's some kickstand
Like a
that costs
tent.
$200.
I mean, you can do it kind of in tent mode.
For some
Yeah.
reason, I see Peter with steaks, like hammering them at Starbucks, going, all right, everybody, I got it taken care of.
Yep,
We're
and
good to go now.
So you can pop it up like that and then use the wireless keyboard. I don't believe it has any mouse functionality, and it relies more on you using a touchscreen, right? Because it is all a touchscreen, unlike any Apple laptop. And so that is how they kind of get past
that part sounds excruciating. But from what I understand, the image you showed has the keyboard more to the front of the screen in front of you. I understand that you can push it to the back as well, and then have the Wunderbar towards the front, and maybe in that case
Or a
you're
touchpad?
using it as a touchpad mouse.
Yeah, all right. I can see that.
So I'm still focused on a phrase that Don used, a lap tablet. Is that trademarked?
I hope not.
Because if not, we need to get that.
A
Lablet?
A lablet.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
Lablet?
I'm all the touchscreen, foldy phone, giant number of screens, not my thing.
Now, they announced that it was going to be running a special version of Windows 10 called Windows 10 X, and I had heard some leaks about it.
Seems
and
redundant.
Well, I was anticipating, if they give it a different name, like this is going to be some annoying, what was the version of Windows 7 that came out that, or maybe it was Windows 8.
It was Windows 8 that only ran on ARM processors.
That ran on ARM processors. What was it called?
Wasn't
It's Windows
RT.
8.
Windows
Yes,
RT.
That's it.
And
Woohoo, I knew something.
What a piece of junk, right? Because
Yeah.
it came with its native stuff, but nobody else was compiling their junk to
Well, that
run
was
on
just
it.
for that one Surface.
It was the first
non-pro
Surface, right?
version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that thing was DOA, and you can buy those for $20 online now, easy, because they're useless.
Can you put Linux on them?
I don't know. Probably not. Like, the Surface is notorious for not supporting other OSs. But with Windows 10X, it's just optimized for two screens. But it is capable of running all the other stuff. So you can run your native applications. It's got an Intel processor in it, and it's not an ARM.
And so I'll point out the difference here is we've been talking about the Galaxy Fold from Samsung for a while, and its whole thing is that there's no crease. Now, it turned out there was a crease as people used it.
You just made it yourself.
It just came out.
It's like a book.
But from what I understand, specifically with the phone and probably with the Neo as well, Microsoft is embracing the crease as a separation of this. These are two workspaces. You'll put, a document over here, and you'll put an email over here. Or you'll put a video you're watching here, and the notes you're taking here. So, there is a visible crease, and it's not like you're using it on its side as one large screen as much as doing multitasking.
Yeah, it's got hinges,
Yeah.
and I do not trust folding screens right now. That
No, it's
technology
not
is
there.
too new. But a hinge device like this is normal, and the screens are perfectly flat, which means it's probably easier to repair. You can actually put a screen protector on it, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is much more of a real device.
For some reason, all I see in my mind is someone going, that's cool, but I got this Intel NUC that's in my pocket, and I got this special harness that lets me actually have two screens that I bolted together with a door hinge. And now I'm at my coffee shop with full-size screens, mouse support. Yeah, eat that, Microsoft.
You could do that today.
So,
I could.
Speaking of doing that today, should I go ahead and start camping out outside of Best Buy for this now?
So according to Satya Nadella, so this comes with a good degree of certainty, you should reserve yours now because supplies will be limited. Except for the announced date, which admittedly I was in a super boring meeting during this whole presentation. I was a little bit going back and forth. I heard him say it would be ready in time for the holiday season, and he didn't say which holiday, but I'm just assuming it's the Christmas holiday here in the U.S. is the big shopping season, which is only 3 months away.
Right around the corner.
By the way, I have an Amazon wish list you guys can look at,
All
but that's only a few months away. So I'm like, man, they've already got this in production. They're really moving forward. Turns out he was referring to the holiday seasons of 2020. So this is more than a year out, 15 months out before we're going to be able to hold this in our hands. And that makes me ask the question, why did they announce this?
It sounds like vaporware, as we were talking about
Unless
before.
it's-
It sounds like it's like, hey, look at this. So it didn't play out like we were hoping it to. My bad.
Well, you think they're maybe trying to hijack some of the Galaxy Fold, because they had that kind of a collapse with it where it didn't work out as planned, so maybe they're trying to swoop in on that. Well, we actually have a folding phone, sort of.
Maybe, but it's not incredibly innovative, right? Like two screens on a flat thing, like just two tablets stuck together with duct tape. Pretty sure somebody could have worked that out.
Yeah.
I feel like they could have had this ready in time, but instead it'll be next year, and that is just so far away that I kind of wonder about whether it'll be in this form when we get it next year, and this will be easy for somebody to copy.
Actually, what is the technical hurdle to making this happen in 3 months from now, right? Or within the next 2 months?
Probably manufacturing, just those
I
kinds of
mean,
things.
come on. I mean, if they're willing to give me a 1% of Facebook or whatever they have, then
You'll make it happen.
Yeah, I go to Home Depot and get some utility hinges and some old tablets.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Windows 10X.
Same thing goes for the, so maybe it's the Windows 10X, right? But the mobile phone isn't going to go until next holiday season. It's running Android. Somebody already made the OS for them.
Yeah, Google.
Yeah. So, you can't blame it on that. I mean, maybe it's getting your applications optimized to be able to spread across the screens. I don't know. I don't know what's pushing that one back so far, but it does seem really odd that they would announce it so early. And I think maybe they were just worried about how lame their event was and said, maybe if we stick this stuff on the end, then it won't be so lame.
Like,
Maybe
we'll
it's the
judge
Wonder Bar.
crowd. Yeah, we'll judge the crowd, and if they're not into it, we'll talk about that new thing.
Yeah, with the Wonder Bar.
Play it by ear.
Hey, Don, I saw you dropped your pen. If you grab a new one here, the bright orange end is the one that you're going to want to put on.
It's not out though. You're good.
All right, our next article, I think we're done with Microsoft.
That's it for
Okay,
Microsoft.
we're done with Microsoft right now.
I'll tie it into another article somehow.
Yeah, exactly. All right, ZDNet.com has our next one. Oh wait, no, I'm on.
It's ZDNet.
Yeah, it's ZDNet, but I jumped ahead. So, Docker. Docker is in deep trouble. In a leaked internal memo, Docker CEO reveals the troubled company is looking for more money. It's like under the couch cushions?
I'm also always looking for more money, oddly enough. But
not
we
a
have
big
something in
announcement.
common, Docker. That's crazy.
So what's happened? Because Docker was the golden boy. It was the big new thing for everybody.
It feels like one of these things where like we're too big to fail. We're all right.
You know, so Docker certainly was the bow of the ball or bell
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 of
of the ball.
What did you say? Bow of the ball?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what kind
You
of ball
have a
you're going to, right?
different
You have not been to a lot of balls.
There's a joke to be had in there, but we're going to move on with Docker. So thing about Docker is they basically took an idea that wasn't new, right? Containers have been around
We've
for a
just
long,
been waiting
long
for
time.
you to say it.
And so, but they took it and they made it very mainstream, and they made it attractive to developers. People like Justin over here can use containers to do all sorts of craziness. And people latched to that, and it's really kind of become a cornerstone of the whole DevOps movement. Containers have facilitated a ton of that. The problem was their business model, because technically Docker, the container engine, is free and open source, right? So easy to copy and
So
duplicate.
that's why they need money.
So they need money, right? Well, and they also need some kind of business model if they want to stay in business. So their original vision was that they were going to offer enterprise services, so like tech support, right? And you can certainly make some money on that.
I mean, that's the whole open source, community.
Yeah. And then the other side of it was they figured they would charge money for their container orchestration platform. And so they created a platform called Docker Swarm. And Swarm would let you manage your containers and move them through your deployment cycles and reissue and update and all that other good stuff. And they would charge money for that. If you were just a home user or an individual developer, you didn't need it. You could use the free Docker and that was it. But if you were an enterprise, you needed that automation. You would pay for Docker Swarm. Then something happened. And Justin, you're smiling, so you know what happened, right?
Kubernetes.
Kubernetes.
The Borg project gave birth to Kubernetes, and Google kind of blew that out of the water. Oops. Yeah, so it's funny because not only is it open source, it conforms to the Cloud Native Foundation's like Spec 4 container runtime, so it can be replaced by other runtimes because Docker is the underlying like container runtime for a lot of these other like Kubernetes. But because it conforms to that standard, they can just go, whoop, there we go.
Okay, so why isn't this an issue for Kubernetes then? Why won't they be
Because
having this
Kubernetes
issue?
is the orchestration that utilizes the container runtime to go, oh, well, here's your containers, here are your containers, let me do service discovery, let me map these together. It could care less whether it's Docker or Rocket or whatever it may be. There's several other competing platforms for that. I don't know if LXC, does that work inside of Kubernetes? I don't know.
does, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So how's Kubernetes making money then?
They're not?
Yeah,
not.
it's Google.
Yeah.
Oh, because it's just part
So
of
Google
Google.
gave up Kubernetes because it came forth from another project internal to Google, Google Borg. And then they were like, well, we don't want to like sway the community. We want people to work on this. So they gave it up. It's actually its own foundation now.
But they still get like $1 bazillion every year from Google.
Yep.
So they're fine.
They're supported by.
So
okay.
when you all of a sudden have competition and your competition doesn't need to make money and they have an unlimited supply of cash from their parent, you are now in trouble. And so that's where Docker is. Docker basically created a product where all of their make money eggs were in one basket and that basket went away. So now they have no viable way of making money, and investors don't want to dump money into it because they already have. And there's no foreseeable business model. So they're scrambling and trying to sort that out. That puts them in pretty rough shape. Somewhere in here, they mentioned they're on like a Series E financing. So that means they've already taken 5 rounds of funding. They've raised $272 million in that time. And now they don't have a viable business model. So that's a bad place to be in. And what I suspect is this is going to lead to an acquisition. Somebody's going to acquire Docker. But who that somebody is a bit up to question because technically they have no value. So
That sounds like Microsoft will buy them.
So it's funny that you say that because Microsoft went all in on Kubernetes. So they picked up some Kubernetes developers. They brought out AKS. I don't know if they would give. One of the problems with they give away the farm, right? Because technically, if I push images, they do all the builds for me. And they let me have that infrastructure for free. There was nothing that made me want to buy into Docker Enterprise.
Well, now, did you know that if you buy a copy of Windows Server 2016, I think it started in 2016, or Windows Server 2019, and install it, that you can load the Docker packages on there, and an enterprise Docker license is included with the Windows Server license?
I did not know that, but I knew that that's when Windows containers that ran with Docker started coming to the forefront.
So Microsoft worked out an enterprise agreement with Docker where they could bake in an enterprise license for Docker with their operating system, making Microsoft one of their largest customers. So if there were an acquisition, it seems like that would be the ideal one.
And with Microsoft's huge push for cloud technologies, I mean, we heard the story earlier on in the podcast.
Virtual desktops.
Yeah.
Microsoft bought, it was GitHub about
GitHub,
like a year or so ago.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Which
they're making
actually is where most of the repository artifacts are hosted for Docker builds.
Yeah.
So Docker Hub links to GitHub repositories that define the container images.
So there's some actionable synergy there.
There certainly is.
You know, it's funny that you say I still have
I know,
actionable
we've
on
got
my
the old cards there that still have
So,
actionable.
while there might not be a giant business case here for Microsoft to do it, like people do like the Docker product, and there's tons of Docker
because
containers.
it's free too.
So if they can get it at a steal, then it may make sense for Microsoft to acquire them. We'll have to see where that goes. But
But will people still like it if they have to pay for it? If someone were to acquire it and then say, hey, all right, we're going to shut this down
Oracle?
and shut this down.
I feel like, Oracle. But I feel like if Microsoft were to acquire them, they could do kind of like Google's doing with Kubernetes, where Google doesn't charge for that.
They just support it, and people are in that ecosystem then. And
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a win for right? Because Kubernetes is supported by Google, but Kubernetes is still a big thing on Azure. Like, it's still used for a large part of their orchestration. Like, it's kind of a win-win there. You don't want I forget, it's Rocket or LXC. There's CoreOS I think Rocket actually is CoreOS. You don't want one of those kind of supplanting that if you've went all in on building these up, especially like Windows containers that Docker does do inside of a Windows OS. And yeah.
Gotcha. All right, well, we have our interview with Tom Lawrence coming up in a minute, but let's get through these next couple of stories here. Staying on ZDNet, Cisco is warning these routers running iOS have 9.9/10 severity security flaw. Cisco is also telling customers to disable an L2 traceroute feature in iOS for which public exploit code exists. So this is... this sounds pretty scary.
Yeah, this is what we call bad.
This is a bad one, yeah.
So there is a exploit that is in the wild right now that affects Cisco iOS and iOS XE routers, which is, the bulk of the routers that Cisco sells. And there are actually 13 separate flaws involved, but one of them is incredibly significant. They rate it either a 9.9 or a 10 out of 10 as far as the vulnerabilities danger level, right? So the CVSS score, it's a CVSS 3.0 score of 9.9 out of a possible 10, which is really, really bad. And what's kind of sad about this is that at least one of the exploits is leveraging that layer 2 ping technology, where you can ping based on MAC addresses that very few people ever actually use, and you might use it for a moment just to test a network, and then you don't use it again. So what they're basically saying is, look, we've got a patch out for this, but you can just disable that functionality if you're not using it, and that kind of solves the problem there too. But it is a big deal. If you are a Cisco shop using Cisco routers, you certainly need to get out there and push out your iOS updates. If you do not have a SmartNet agreement, then Cisco doesn't give you those updates, and you're out of luck, and just know that your systems are not secure. So this is also a revenue generator for them, because people will need to update their SmartNet agreement.
So what can a bad actor do through this exploit?
So once you take over a router, you can do a lot of stuff, but the main thing is you can redirect traffic. If you take over a switch, which there are actually some of these exploits that carry over to switches, you can do port mirroring and actually capture traffic without people even knowing it. So those are kind of two big things people do when they get into infrastructure. But redirecting traffic is the big deal. They can also do things like intercept and modify DNS requests and things to make it where you think you're going to one website and you're actually being sent to another, which allows them to intercept credentials. There's a lot of really bad things. You don't want somebody taking over your network infrastructure. You'd rather them take over an endpoint if you had a choice.
Gotcha. All right, we're going to go over now to CNN Business. Another thing to be concerned about. Apple warns that iOS 13 keyboards can leak your data. Now, iOS 13, is that what just came out?
Yes.
With the last announcement? Okay. And so we've already got an issue there. But I don't feel, has that been pushed out?
Yeah. So
widely?
in fact, iOS 13.1 just came out a couple of days ago.
Okay.
So, but it's only been out for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. This is a very new thing. But Apple rolled out support for third-party keyboards a while ago, and in the latest update, when you update to iOS 13, there's a bug in the update process that can potentially grant your third-party keyboard full access to your system, which opens it up to the possibility that they could leak your data out. When you install a third-party keyboard, it doesn't get full access by default, and a lot of them will ask for that access, and people will grant it anyway. So in your case, it doesn't really matter. But if you're using a third-party keyboard, that bug may have given it more permissions than it should have. And you can double-check that. You go into your iOS settings, and I think you go to like General Keyboard, and then inside of the keyboard, you can see whether it's granted full access, and you can turn that off. But you have to know to check for it. They are resolving that in an update that actually is part of the 13.1 update. So if you've already gone 13.1, it's probably fixed. But I know for me, I did run a third-party keyboard because I liked swiping. They baked that into the default keyboard now. And so when I updated to iOS 13, I actually removed my third-party keyboard. And so I kind of dodged the bullet on this
Well,
one.
I am on 13 now.
Well,
Okay.
look at that.
I'll have to, 13.1.2. So I will have to ask you how to set up that keyboard swipey thing because
It's already
is
on.
it just in there?
If
Okay.
you're using the Apple keyboard, you can just swipe your finger. It's not, I love swipe keyboards. That's
I'll text you in a little bit, and if it looks really bad, it's because I used that. What did he say?
the new voice text.
All right, let's head back over to ZDNet here. Vengeful IT admin thrown behind bars for destroying Army systems on exit. His efforts earned him 2 years in prison. I hope on that same base, too. I hope he was put in the brig there. But, I mean, how do you not know that you're going to get caught for this?
So, we get these articles every so often about an IT admin who goes nuts, and when they lose their job, they destroy the systems, delete data or whatever. But to do it to the Army, to people with guns, like
These
that
are
just
big guns.
And possibly aggression that is just,
Yeah.
there's like, man, I'm just looking. He did what?
Javelin missile launchers. I mean,
We
talking
got a
about
training
handguns.
day, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it happens to the local tax collector or whatever, I don't really think twice about it. But when it happens to a U.S. military base, and let's make this even worse, because it's not just the U.S. Army. It was the U.S. Army Chaplain Corps.
Oh, man.
So now you're messing with, like, the Army and God.
yeah.
Uh-oh. That
That's what does it go? God, country, family. I mean, that's like the first two.
God, guns, government?
Oh,
no.
you're right.
Wait,
Yeah,
is
that's
that it? I think there's two different ones.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask.
Priorities.
there's guns in both of those.
Yeah, and I feel like God's near the top
Yeah.
on both of them as well.
And he did bad things.
So what did he do? He went into their AWS.
Yeah, he went into the AWS. He terminated a bunch of instances and wiped out a bunch of snapshots. And when you have a cloud environment, it's all virtual. You
Yeah.
can toast a lot of stuff fairly quickly.
And that's not stuff you can get back then.
Well, if he's the one who configured the backups and replicas and all that, then
Yeah,
he
then-
probably could have wasted those as well. I don't actually know what they were able to recover.
He also
on
it
this
also
one.
says that he downloaded some service account information and network diagrams as well as system images and shared them.
And he changed the whois information on their domain to take control.
Oh,
Like, I mean,
Wow.
it's pretty obvious. You can go in, you can run a report and see.
I wonder who did this.
Yeah.
Says Bill owns this.
yeah. Well, I don't
Didn't
think
we
he was the
fire
best
Bill?
IT admin around.
Maybe
Could
that's
be
why he
why
got
he was
fired.
fired. Oh, it's all coming back. Okay.
Peter,
Well,
who wrote this article?
Charlie Osborne. I will point out that
Where are they from?
security. It says at the end. I'll point out maybe this person could not find another job and said, "Well, I know where I can get room and board for 2 years and free meals."
Maybe he had a friend that's a marketer, and they said, no PR is bad PR, or wait, what's the
Bad
saying?
PR is
Did I-
good PR?
Did I
Bad
screw
press?
that up? Yeah,
no press is bad
no
press.
press is bad press.
Except
There
I
we
don't think his name is. Oh no, Anthony. Yeah, so yeah, he's being advertised here,
Yeah.
but he's being advertised about how poorly he is at covering his tracks. The thing is, if you are, if there's an article written about you, it's because you did it not correctly.
Well, I don't want a smart saboteur.
Good point. Do you want to hire somebody who's good at hiding their tracks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all right, so he doesn't know a great deal about IT, but he knows enough to get by, and we know he can't hide it from us when he does something poorly.
What he should have done is what we talked about last week and just said when they caught him, going, well, you passed the pen test. Way to go, blue team.
Whew, you got me.
Now let's test those backups.
Yeah, that I wiped out. Hey, sticking with the military here, kind of, sort of, over at PCMag.com. illegal data center in old military bunker shut down. That sounds, I mean, there's all these old, missile silos all over the place. This one out in Germany, actually, it's a NATO bunker acquired in 2013, then turned into a heavily secured data processing center for illegal activities linked to organized crime and the dark web, which we haven't said in a lot of weeks here.
Oh, thank
But,
you.
I do have that on my card. Look at
I
that.
actually don't have it on my card, so it's good that I'm the one that said it. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And you did notice I said pen testing earlier.
Oh,
right?
brother, I own it.
You got that? Okay.
I own it.
No one said it back.
Well, so there are military bunkers and underground complexes spread all across Europe that are artifacts of World War II. Many of them were kept active even through the Cold War, but are abandoned now. And it turns out that in many cases, private entities are able to buy these. And what better place to build an illegal data center than in a massively fortified underground bunker, which is exactly what they did here. And in the picturesque town of Traben-Tarbach in Germany. And basically, they wanted to create a data center that had no laws, right? You could just do whatever you wanted in there. There were many websites such as Cannabis Road, the Wall Street Market, and Orange Chemicals.
Cannabis Road, like the Silk Road?
Yeah.
For cannabis?
All of these were very prominent ones on the dark web where people were basically selling drugs in a eBay-like format. And you could go on there and...
How would you pay for those drugs?
I imagine with Drug Pal.
Dang it.
Or
couldn't have said Bitcoin.
Dogecoin.
I'm sure various cryptocurrencies were likely supported, and you don't have cryptocurrency
No,
on
but
your
I have
card.
Bitcoin that I
Well,
said.
take that. So
What technology is cryptocurrency based on?
The internet.
They all resided in this picturesque town of
Bought by
Trebek.
Yep.
So
59-year-old
those were
Dutchman.
some pretty big operations being run out of there, and so now the operators of this data center are being held. They have been denied bail because they have a huge flight risk, but also they have collusion because they're tied to criminal organizations. They're worried about them putting hits out on various people who might testify. They have hundreds of thousands of charges being filed against them for every single transaction that occurred on their network, and it is a big deal. But yeah, basically it has been busted. But know that this is certainly not the only data center like this in the world.
I was told that there was no collusion.
Oh, no?
Yeah.
Can we neither confirm nor deny these
Yeah,
allegations?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds fun, and it sounds like every movie where you would have the data center.
Yeah.
It would be.
So
in a
you're telling me I
underground
can
bunker.
buy an old NATO bunker?
Yeah.
What's the going rate on this?
Well, here's the thing: if you did it in the U.S., the places these bunkers are like in the middle of the field in South Dakota. I mean, they're not.
Well, I mean, if I'm going to buy a bunker, that's where I want it to be.
Well, sure, but I mean, just for getting supplies and stuff, it's not ideal.
People live in South Dakota.
Nah, I don't think they do.
There's got to be
If
like a
I got-
Wendy's nearby,
If
right?
I got money for a bunker, I got money for a helicopter.
If you live in South Dakota and are a Technado fan, please let us know and prove me wrong, because I think it's just the one park ranger that lives there for the.
Also, in that bunker, if there's a JD Power Award, we would also like to have that.
That's where they keep them.
I know there's at least one park ranger in South Dakota because we got pulled
You got
and issued a
kicked out.
citation at Mount Rushmore. Yeah, so
you're not allowed to just film podcast interviews
That's
in Mount Rushmore.
our dedication to our viewers.
Yeah.
Willing
That's a federal offense too. That's-
an armed park ranger.
Hey, we have an interview that I mentioned earlier. We got Tom Lawrence, who's somebody that you've done a webinar with actually about ransomware and MSPs. So we'll definitely talk to him about that and everything else he's been up to. But stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break and come back with that interview with Tom Lawrence on the Technado. Hey, IT pros, let IT Pro TV add food, drinks, and fun to your next meetup. Sysadmins, security groups, network admins, and more, tell us about your meetup and we may send you a meetup kit to make your meeting extra special. Your kit contains a gift card for refreshments, t-shirts, and stickers to give away, plus access codes for all of your group members to try IT Pro TV for free. Request a meetup sponsorship kit for your group today. Visit www.itpro.tv/events. All right, welcome back to Technado. We're joined now by Tom Lawrence, who is the president of Lawrence Systems. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Hey, so we've actually talked to you before. We had a webinar recently that Don did with you talking about MSPs and ransomware. And so Lawrence Systems, you guys are actually an MSP, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about, do you have like a specific market that you work within, a specific type of client, or it's kind of an MSP for anyone that needs your services?
Pretty much anyone that needs our services. We don't focus on any one vertical, but nature of being in Detroit, physically around us is a lot of manufacturing and transportation. So we happen to have a whole lot of manufacturing and transportation clients. But we do get into some of the other ones, but we don't specialize in anything like medical, HIPAA. We outsource any of those aspects of it. So we're more of a general MSP for a lot of different companies, from law offices to a lot of dental offices lately, after that little incident that brought up on the topic of ransomware for that one MSP that was specializing in dental offices that also got ransomware. That's actually led to a shift to customers in that market. But yeah, we're overall pretty general as MSP, but specific in a lot of consulting areas, which is, we'll get into that in a second.
So with the dental offices, did someone get root?
Yes, they got
Okay,
rooted.
thank you. That's all I have. I'm out of here.
I'll give you a high five on that one. That one was good.
I'm done for the week.
He is also rude.
All right. Yeah, it's another shirt too. It all comes together. So I'm curious. People might recognize you as well because you have a very successful YouTube channel. So tell us a little bit about. Is that just focused at MSPs or anyone that's involved in tech and support and that kind of thing?
So it started out with, we wanted to share some of the knowledge, and I just kind of like, I want to do this video thing. I have a cousin who's a big YouTube star, and she makes a living at it. And I was like, oh, how does this all work? So I started digging into it a couple of years ago, and I'm like, well, this is really interesting. And so I just started picking topics that I was familiar with and started making videos on them, which the very earliest videos I had were like how to repair laptops at the board level, because my background is not just IT, it's also in like board level electronics repair. So, I have a few videos on that, and I'm like, well, people seem interested in a few other topics. So we really doubled down and focused on it. And we talk about the MSP side. And I realized there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstandings about how the back end of IT works or how products work. So we just started taking products as they pass through our office, being provided to solutions for clients, and broke them down into videos and going, this is how we set up a storage server. This is how we set up this type of firewall. And my firewall videos are the ones that really kind of took off. And I realized that there's not enough people covering a lot of these open source firewalls. I'm a big open source advocate. So if you type in Lawrence Systems, it actually auto completes with PF a lot, because that's one of the firewalls I've covered, absolutely in depth. So that's kind of how I got my start into it. But it's always one of those things like I'm looking over at the other screen I have open because I was working on a video or doing a deep dive into how IOPS work when you're using virtualization with FreeNAS. I'm doing a whole nother series on that right now. But a lot of it's because we're deploying this for a commercial customer. You have to do the research anyway. So why not turn it into a video and share with the class is how I like to put it, let everybody know and further us all along in the discussion.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. But so I'm curious now what your day looks like. How much are you actually working on the MSP side? How much are you, generating content for the channel? I mean, is that, you said your cousin, makes a living off of it. Is that a pretty good source of income for you now?
Yeah. Right now we have it all broke down because I'm very public about everything. When I say I believe a lot in open source, I actually believe in telling people how our business runs. And we cover specifically on YouTube. I did a video of a breakdown of how much ad revenue I get from YouTube. And it pays pretty well right now. I think we're roughly between the Amazon affiliate and YouTube. And I break those down like those because they have the best analytics and detail for how the revenue comes in. It's about $80,000 a year in revenue that comes for that. And it's also how we generate leads for the company. So we quit advertising in 2018. Like we quit spending any money in type of marketing. We still go out to physical events, Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, things like that. But we don't do any regular marketing like buying Google AdWords or Facebook. We did that in the past and we had good conversion rate for it. But when we started making the videos, we realized that put us in contact with a lot more people for the consulting work we do. For example, helping people do storage planning or helping people design firewalls in data centers. Because we have an expertise, my team does on that, it's been really interesting from a lead generation standpoint. The other side of it, how much time do I spend on both? It's kind of funny. So one of the videos I did recently on Sierra Cata was actually because of the consulting work we did with a very large company for how intrusion detection systems. And they were working on writing a next generation one. So I consulted with their dev team for a few hours. And I told them I would actually make a video which all I do is make it very generic, so it doesn't specifically have any client names in it or anything like that, but it covers those details. So sometimes it's even a follow-up. So there's some blendedness to the content I create and why there's almost a seemingly random, like, Tom, you talked about a Raspberry Pi yesterday and then you're on Serracata today. It has to do with the consulting gigs, is actually what drives the video creation. And sometimes the videos are proof of concept. So I build something out in a lab to see how it's going to work before it gets deployed to a client, for how we engineered a solution. So I usually make a video about how we're going to deploy it and just leave the client's name out.
And that's kind of what I was going to ask. You mentioned, transparency, and it sounds like a lot of your clients are familiar with the fact that you have this channel because that's how they found you. So,
yes.
Do you ever get into specifics about the client, like with their permission, or is I feel like some people could maybe guess names and things like that, or find out about vulnerabilities based on what they see on your channel.
Yeah, so it's only with implicit permission, because people always beg us to do more on-site jobs. So I have an infrastructure team in addition to the MSP where we build out, do all the wiring, all the drops and everything else. And when it's a new building with no existing people, we can easily get permission because there's no one in there to film all of it on site. But an actual deployment where any client's names are in there without written and implicit permission, I can't cover it. But I have, for example, some videos, and one of them is upcoming. I did ask, the IT people said yes, but the people at the top said no, because it's a medical facility that we installed a large 300 access point, multi-fiber, lots of connections on this one campus, large Wi-Fi install. They don't mind I do the video on it. They absolutely want their name nowhere on it. And I said, okay, so I can't even showcase them as a client. So we're always very careful about that, making sure it's permission. And of course, even when they do give us permission, keeping things very tight about the maybe certain ways the security, any of their IP addresses, for example, all that's going to be either blurred out or just completely omitted from the coverage of a project.
Now, I'm curious about some of the things you're seeing out there in the field, because we've been covering on Technado at least a lot of articles on ransomware. We've done webinars over at IT Pro TV, and it's a hot topic. People ask me about it all the time. So out there in the field, and let's take the case of the dentist office and just kind of set that aside as an outlier. Or not one, it was many dentist office, but on just a regular basis, like how big of a problem is ransomware? Are you having people contact with you on that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? Like how much of that are you seeing?
So it depends on the context. So as far as people calling us, like customers calling us, not too frequently, maybe one a week, just, on a cold call coming in like, hey, there's this thing on my screen. We see a few, but it's not absolutely immense. But because I participate in a lot of forums, like on Reddit and things like that with other MSPs and other Facebook groups that are private and closed, that's a daily occurrence. And not only occurrence in terms of like their clients getting ransomware, or a lot of times your potential clients, like it's kind of fuzzy. Like the ones that are running our full MSP stack, I'm not worried about. But we have a lot of break fix clients that are not under any type of contract. Those are the ones, and a lot of other IT companies have them as well. They call you when they need you. And so they have no patches, no updates, no ongoing maintenance. And of course, when they really need you is right after someone clicked on that phishing email. So it's definitely highly prevalent out there. There is quite a bit of it. We just have we've pushed so many people into contracts. We're seeing it a little bit less with our customers, but we do see the spam, we see the reports, we see the stopped messages and things like that. So we know absolutely the bad actors are trying really hard on it.
And I used to work for an MSP years ago, and I know that back then, every system I touched was pretty much a Windows system because that's how businesses were. But today, that whole world has changed quite a bit. So I imagine that adds a little more complexity to it because you're seeing a lot of Macs that are being rolled out in business. Well, let's back up because I'm applying an assumption here. Are you seeing a lot of Macs rolled out in businesses?
No, so we still do not see, with the exception of our companies that focus on like graphic design, we just don't see as much Mac in the marketplace, with the exception of our graphic design companies. And I say graphic design, but it's kind of interesting. There's, for example, one of the largest trailer manufacturers in the area, like makes the trailers for large trucks. They're one of our clients, but they have a 6-person design team that half of them use Mac. And it's actually besides that, there's only like one other client that we have out of the several hundred businesses we do IT for in the greater Detroit area that are Mac based. It's actually, we're not seeing it as much. I don't know if it's the nature of where we are, but even the few MSPs we have out of state that we're managing kind of in a co-managed position, we don't have many Macs in those stacks either.
Yeah, that's where we get a slightly skewed view here because we have so many marketing people and people on the production team, and they're all Macs all over the place. In fact, I'm pretty sure the Macs outnumber the Windows machines 2-1 here in the building. I'm on a Windows machine or Linux, depending on the day. But I guess I have the Mac behind me, so I kind of cover all three bases.
Yeah, and you ran a Mac for a while.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the other companies that we don't have directly as clients, like where places my friend works, that's a big developer company. They don't use an outside MSP, but they're pretty much, I think, like 80% Mac, all the developers. I think they got like over 200 employees, and it's all pretty much Mac. So it's not that it's not out there, but those are the places. Matter of fact, they have a very lightweight, for as many people as they have, they don't really have a dedicated IT person. They just kind of, everyone knows enough. It's a strange setup that they have, how they do it, but yeah, it's just kind of all Mac, and that's kind of the attitude they have is we're all Mac, so we don't need full protection for things.
Yeah, and that was kind of what my question was originally going to be is like, what do you do to help make sure those systems stay protected? Because it's not like the old days where people would say, I have a Mac and I don't get viruses. Macs get viruses and stuff too, just like everybody else. So, what are some of the things that you're doing to help protect those clients?
The biggest thing we're going to see is the user training. And I listened to your last podcast where you had a guy talking about cybersecurity and the people training side, and it's huge. We really hammer that home. It's like, I can only give you so many tools and so many things in your stack, but so much of it does still come in through email and phishing. So focusing on user training around that and really stop and think, do you click on this? Do you really need this? Whatever this is, does it seem too good to be true? Like, you just kind of play through with those clients and talk through that and keep focusing on the user training, sending them some phishing emails, setting up programs so they can get phishing emails. Those are huge in trying to determine whether or not they're going to be secure, because that's the best stuff, the best stack I can throw at it. I've actually seen an attack where someone called. They had such good protection on their work email. They talked the person into opening the attachment and logging into their own Gmail to try to be helpful. And that way they could get around it. It was just ridiculous. So it's like that. Look, you got to be suspicious. The attacker did make the phone call to get them to log into their own personal Gmail to receive an attachment because they realized the work was blocking it. I mean, you have to be watching out for that. It should raise some red flags and reminding people that they are after things. So the threat is real. The threat model is real. So a lot of the user training comes into play for the Mac people, as long as, like I said, lots of mail filtering as well.
Yeah, and I know for a while, a lot of people were worried that cloud technologies were going to kind of eliminate the job of the average IT worker, the sysadmin or the help desk support or whatever. At least from my side, I haven't seen that happen because it just means that now instead of supporting physical servers, we're supporting the cloud. Are you guys providing cloud services for your customers?
Yeah, we actually have a client that migrated. They did not want to, upgrade that 2003 server. That was it's still turned on somewhere because they leave it on in case it needs something. Good news is they have a backup of it. But they did. We helped them transition all of it to an enterprise application, and they're actually a manufacturer of gutters, like for your house. But by moving everything to the cloud, we actually moved them also to getting a series of Chromebooks. We installed better Wi-Fi in their office and some of their infrastructure. They got Chromebooks. They got Chromebooks with the 4G cards in them for their sales guys. They can track where all the people are with the tracking technology. So they see where their crews are that do the installs. The sales guy can open up the laptop. He types in a few things. He's got 4G connection. He can give you a quote real quick. So yeah, they're still a client. We're still facilitating services for them. And we've still seen problems with the Chromebooks. We've seen problems with connectivity and little, gotchas that happen. And even with they still got to print some things. So the cloud print problems, well, we had to solve some of those for them. And they still have a few people inside running QuickBooks, and they didn't want to go to a cloud for that. So there's still plenty of work to do for IT, and there's still all the aspects of managing that cloud infrastructure. It doesn't just magically work. You still have to build out the servers. The servers themselves still need updates, configurations, and you look at something like the Capital One breach. That was just a misconfigured AWS instance. Same thing. You still need tech and IT to configure AWS if that's where you're hosting something to be proper, secure, and audited. So it's not like we become irrelevant, but you need to shift what you're looking at. I'm not installing Exchange anymore. That was years ago. It's funny. I still have, because we've been in business for 16 years. Clients we did on-prem Exchange before, and now no one does on-prem Exchange. It's not what I'm doing anymore, but there's people who hang on to it. We recently picked up a client because their other IT company didn't believe in the cloud, thought it was too dangerous in 2019.
Don't believe in the cloud.
Yeah, that sounds great.
But if I close my eyes, it'll go away.
Yeah, look, that one looks like a penguin.
Yeah, and I don't want to pick on the other IT company too much, but the weird gray beard was thrown around a little bit. The person just didn't believe anything shouldn't be on-prem, and he's looked at the cost and go, we don't want to own the problem anymore. Like any other company in our category, they put it in Office 365, and that's just the way things are now. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And I still run some IT companies just because they think their biggest value is what they only know. They don't want to progress. They go, I always manage on-prem Exchange, and then you buy a Barracuda device to put in front of it. That's great. That was selling that stack 10 years ago, 12 years ago. That's not what I sell today. So you have to evolve with it. I don't see the irrelevance. You just have to change the knowledge and where you're at with it.
So I have two questions, actually. Did I just get an email from you asking for Target gift cards, and should I go ahead and click on that link?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I was just making sure because I know you were talking about like phishing and stuff. So I'll get those to you later. But number
Absolutely.
two,
Share with a friend.
exactly. Let's back up just a little bit, right? You've been talking about supporting your customers. We talked about you doing some of your YouTube stuff. But what I wanted to know is, has doing the YouTube series, has that made you better at your other aspects of your job? Like, has that provided an avenue for becoming more knowledgeable?
More than human?
Yeah, more than human. I don't know why there's a White Zombie song coming in here.
Yeah, more human than human. So you're never as wrong as when you're wrong on the internet, and there's some permanent record of it. So the bar has been raised. I will get called out on my BS. I can't just say something. It's like I'm speaking at some conference or anything like that. So I go in my research and dive twice as deep I probably should have in the whole ZFS. Matter of fact, I spent time messaging back and forth. The guy who didn't write the book on ZFS, he wrote 2, Michael Lucas. So I actually sat down before I did some of the talks on FreeNAS and ZFS with the guy who wrote 2 books on just the ZFS file system. So you do dive deeper in it when you do it. So I think it's actually pushing me to be better. And I want to make sure I have very concise answers for my audience. And you're judged overall about the quality of your content. That's one of the things that when I first started doing the PFSense videos, the firewall ones, I realized there were some videos with a lot of views, but they had some misrepresentations of how things worked and just bad information. I don't want to say it any other way than that. Just bad information, pretty wrong about how things work. And of course, that's a dangerous thing if someone's following along with this video going, oh, you just configure it like that. Like, no, that's not a secure way to configure things. So, my own hubris saying I can't see that out there on a popular product, saying I got to do better. So I spent a lot of time deep diving into products. So overall, my answer is yes, it forces me to be a better tech. If not, you're going to get a lot of bad comments and be as wrong as ever when you're on the internet and wrong.
All right. Well, working with as many customers as you do, you get a chance to see a lot of technology that's actually in use. And I know that's not normally cutting edge. It's technology that's stable and reliable and so on. But there's a lot of really new and crazy stuff coming out right now. So what is a technology that you are looking forward to your customers having?
I wish everyone had everything virtualized. I will tell you that to me, in all my years, like 20 years working in tech, it's still magic when you watch just how quickly you can just shift a VM while it's running in an infrastructure. We did an upgrade for a client like that. They were already on an old version of Citrix N server. We moved them to a new system based on the new XCP NG server, which is kind of easy to do a shift over to. But wow, like watching live VMs live without shutting down a company because they're in the transportation market and everything is critical. They run a huge, like 100,000 square foot warehouse that they have to have inventory controls on. Being able to move those live machines around, that stuff's just getting better and faster. So it's one of the technologies between Microsoft really doubling down and getting all the improvements in Hyper-V. I'm a fan of the XCP-NG. There's also Proxmox, and of course the elephant in the room is ESXi. VMware's been doing it forever. That is, as that technology has progressed and the way the failover works and how you're abstracting the operating system from the hardware underneath it, that's been one of the biggest changes that's always got me just really excited. I really love how all that works. It's once you get a good grasp of it, but and that relates directly to the IOPS training, because when people build these and they build them wrong, they don't work as fluidly as we'd like them to when we do these shift over to different servers.
Yeah, we talked recently or earlier in this episode about Microsoft announcing the Windows Virtual Desktop, kind of being more available. how long is it, do you think, until that's something that you see on all of your clients? Like, I mean, if you look back 10, 12 years, no one was doing anything with the cloud, and that's where everything is now. How long do you think until everyone's just on a system like that?
So I look at it as the tail of legacy is long. You have legacy systems just keep getting patched and carry on, especially when, like I said, the industry I work with manufacturing, there's a lot of old systems. I always joke we have a Windows 95 machine that runs a laser beam. That is just scary, but it etches things in there, and it ain't broke, don't fix it. So they're still running it. I still feel, even with the whole Azure shift and the whole Azure desktop system, which is really cool, the other side of it is it's all Band-Aids on keeping these legacy applications. We're seeing so much more powerful apps in the web. So anything new, if I'm going to start a company today, if I'm going to start a new software product, am I going to make an application that runs on desktops, or am I going to make something that's web enabled? Web enabled, hands down. There's just really not, when you look at the whole ecosystem, people are either developing mobile apps or they're developing web enabled apps, the whole 2.0 HTML5, very dynamic. And I think it's like a Band-Aid. Like, we're going to keep these desktops until finally we've aged out all of these old legacy apps. I'm going to see more and more. Like I said, this whole company with the gutters, there's no desktop app. This whole thing is actually a brilliant application that does all the speccing, that does all of the sales quotes. And it's all run on a Chromebook. It's all web enabled. And they can just throw away the Chromebook, log back in with a single sign-on, and have access to everything, their email, everything, because it does a single sign-on through their G Suite account. It's kind of a no-brainer. You've abstracted it, and you haven't had this whole troublesome of dealing with it in the cloud and having this, more persistent connection, spinning up hardware and loading applications. I really like the way Azure does the publish applications, because we're trying to abstract the application layer from the OS again. But, once again, there's compute time, there's everything else versus just have it as a website. It just works better. So I think that's more the future and where things are going, at least how I see them right now. But it's going to be a long time before we get rid of QuickBooks and Outlook.
QuickBooks and Outlook. Oh, QuickBooks. It gives me nightmares every time I hear that word said. But you're moving things to the cloud. You have Chromebooks, but then there's all these other internet connected or network connected devices. You were talking about a Raspberry Pi, but what about, like smart doorbells, Alexas, all these? Does that make your job harder? Does that make it easier? Like, if someone goes, well, I know you took care of all this, but I brought my Google Home from home and I set it on my desk. Is that something that you address? Is that made things more difficult for you, or how's that play out?
A lot of time that plays out with us is making sure, and it's actually been a big growth for us, is all these big Wi-Fi installs. Matter of fact, one of the medical place that installed the 300 access points, it supports a massive amount of devices, and they had to separate everything out in separate VLANs and separate SSIDs for everything. People are starting to grasp a lot better, at least I feel they are. There's been a bit growing concern when we consult with even other internal IT networks, like, we don't think we want this whole bring your own device on our network. And the way we filter it out, for example, is it's not like we're just splitting things into different SSIDs. It actually leaves all this, the crap network stuff, all the randomness that is brought into this medical building, including the phones of the nursing staff and things like that. They go out of a separate internet connection. So they have a nice, a gig fiber connection coming in from a commercial ISP. And then they literally just have a general Comcast business cable modem, and we route all the traffic over there. So we're starting to see that separation of traffic from it, which I like. And it's been a big growth for us because, well, as soon as they go, we need it. Oh, crap, we don't have enough Wi-Fi for this number of devices. So we start splitting it up. But I think there's become more and more awareness that this is really necessary. I laugh. One of the funniest hacks, I think it was like 2 years ago, was where a fish tank at a casino was put on, the monitoring of the fish tank was put on the same network as some of the secure infrastructure for the casino. And that was the pivot point by which they hacked and got lateral movement, was by hacking the fish tank. And they're like, oh, look, we're inside the network because the IT guys set up the fish tank and they just stuck it on that network instead of a guest network.
I guess that would count as a phishing attack, right?
Okay.
Boom.
For some reason, I was just thinking octopus. I was like, those octopi, they are shifty creatures.
Yeah, Don got all upset when I brought my Samsung smart fridge into the office and set that up. So, but I think it's important to.
But it said "I am root" on the front of it.
Yeah. Hey, so Tom, if someone wants to find your YouTube channel and subscribe, tell us where we can do that.
So we keep
YouTube,
everything
right?
at lawrencesystems.com. You can find our tweets, our blog posts, our YouTube. Matter of fact, every YouTube video through automation generates a blog post on our WordPress site to attach to our website. That way it makes all of our content nice and easy to find for people. So head over to lawrencesystems.com and it'll get you the links to everything. But also I have 896 videos. So if you search Lawrence Systems, the way the YouTube algorithm works, it drives you right to YouTube anyways. So
Yeah, until they demonetize you and
yeah, and all that massive confusion.
Hey, well, thank you so much for taking the time today, and I'm sure you'll kind of be our go-to MSP sounding board whenever we have anything that we want to know about what's going on in your industry. But thank you for taking the time with us today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for watching, but stay tuned. We have more Technado coming up right after this.
Are you a career changer or a budding tech pro who's looking to start their career in IT? I'm Wes Bryan, and along with my fellow IT Pro TV edutainer Cherokee Boos, we've just shot a new show just for you. Each week, we'll dive into topics to help you launch your career in tech. Watch how to get started in IT on YouTube now. Just head to youtube.com/ITProTV to watch and look for new episodes every Saturday at 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time.
All right, welcome back to Technado, and thank you so much, Tom, for joining us. And I think we'll see Tom's face around here a little bit more. He's already, like you said, done a webinar for us, and I think we'll bring him back again and again.
Yeah.
I think he thought I was joking about my XPS getting fixed. I
Yeah,
really need to reach
just
out
send
to
it to him.
Yeah.
I think we can increase his YouTube revenue by at least 5 Gs.
I do have 5G on my card there. That did not wrap it up for me, though, but I will send you a couple Bitcoin as a thank you there, John, for getting that for
If
me.
you have been playing along with
Bitcoin?
whatever bingo, I think that just nailed it in for Justin.
No,
it did.
thought
It
you
did.
did.
It.
I need to. It went the wrong way.
I thought that was all he needed.
Oh, no, you needed blockchain.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, hey, you got it there. Hey, we got a couple things to let you know about before we let you go. Got a couple really cool webinars actually coming up here. One that's gotten a lot of buzz online so far. Our end of life for Windows 7. Is your organization prepared? And, you know, a lot of you are saying, hey, I've been off Windows 7 for years. But, of course, we've got those enterprises using legacy systems, government, schools, things like that. And so sometimes you have to make sure that you are all set for that. That's coming up Thursday, October 10th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Wes Bryan is going to do that along with Cherokee Boos. Also, another really cool one that I'm excited about. It's going to be on Halloween on Thursday, October 31st. Threats in disguise. Are you haunted by the hidden hacker hardware? We're going to be talking about, IoT devices, but also things like Wi-Fi pineapples and, land turtles and key trackers and all those things that could be hidden in your network. And Don, you might be wearing a costume for this one, right?
I don't know. Oh, actually, I'm not, because we're going to be wearing limited edition IT Pro TV hoodies
That we are giving
Hackers
away
have to wear a hoodie.
some of those. Yeah, if you just head over to some of the IT Pro TV social accounts, we're going to be talking all about that and the giveaways there. But I think we got like 6 that we'll be giving away over the course of October for a couple things, but the webinar included there. So yeah, maybe we'll find a way to make that a costume as well, like a Unabomber. I don't know. You can put that on sunglasses.
Wow, you went straight for Kaczynski?
Well, I'm thinking who's wearing a hoodie?
Justin
Good
Timberlake,
costume. I mean,
Mr. Robot.
400-pound guy in his basement.
Every
You
person
went
under
with the
25.
PhD mathematician that ended up having like paranoid delusions and shot at
We all have
aircrafts
heroes.
with a gun.
We all
Out in
have
a
heroes.
shack. You
We're
couldn't
going
have
to give
went
away
for-
blue jeans, just like Charlie Manson wore.
Yep. Little tiny sets of blue. He was a diminutive man. He was like 5'2".
Oh, was he?
Tiny little dude.
You watch Mindhunters on Netflix?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Ed
talked
Kemper.
all about that.
Ed Kemper.
Yeah, oh, it's
Crazy person.
Anyway,
Anyway.
big fan. Anyway, head over to itpro.tv/webinars. You can sign up for those upcoming webinars. You can also check out all of the webinars that have happened in the past and find the archive there and view those things that are relevant to you as well. Also, while you're on that internet, head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. We've got a 30% off coupon code if you're signing up for an IT Pro TV subscription, which why haven't you done this by now? We also, if you are part of a business, we have a form you can fill out there to get a demo for your business to learn about all the cool things going on with IT Pro TV there and our Pro Portal and all that fun stuff. So head over to go.itpro.tv/Technado. All right, gentlemen, any closing thoughts here before we wrap up this this big podcast?
It's been a fun week. A lot of Microsoft announcements. We don't always get that. We'll see if they turn out to be vaporware or real the deal.
Yeah, we just have to wait like 2 years to get our hands on these devices and really see what's going on.
Did anybody get bingo?
I did not get bingo. I didn't even get close this week.
And I
said
did.
Okay, I was going to say I gave you guys
so
some.
you gave it to me with Bitcoin.
With Bitcoin? Okay.
Otherwise, I would not have gotten bingo.
I tell you what, you almost have like the perfect diagonal because technically Peter did say IoT just a second ago.
Yeah, I did say IoT.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But my ransomware attack free space Linux Bitcoin, that's like a pretty...
By the way, you got 2 because I said IoT.
Wait a minute.
I
was
said
attack
5G.
said?
Attack was definitely said. More
I
than
said
once.
5G after you said 5G.
Then I also got bingo.
If you didn't know you got bingo, you didn't get bingo. That's not.
That's how it works.
That's not what the old ladies. They don't come around to your station afterwards
Check
and go.
your card.
You got bingo too.
I don't see any old ladies.
Turn that hearing aid up, Justin. All right. Well, thank you
what'd you
everybody
say?
for watching. Exactly. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Technado.